before Elon added the clarification. That's the first screenshot you sent me, Ian. So okay. The first time you violate this policy by sharing private information, brackets, such as home address, which you can say, hey, I'm tracking the home address, identity documents, etc. Would you, I'm not telling you to agree with the decision that Elon made, but would you agree that, because I'm also split, like I understand where you're coming from as well, Matt, but would you agree based on this that it is fair, I'm not saying it's right, but it is fair to say that a jet could be included under that, etc., as private information similar to a home address? Is that a fair point to make? Because I'm leaning towards that side of the argument, that it's maybe he didn't handle it correctly, should have done it, I don't know, maybe differently. I don't know about that, but would you agree that the private jet could be considered private information such as a home address?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, in my own personal opinion, I don't think so. But again, I'm not the one who wrote those rules. I don't know what they had in mind. Like that's good. Like there's going to be no answer to that. It's just we could only go by what actions were actually done, and the fact that Twitter, that existed before Elon Musk, allowed this account under their rules. I mean, that proves more than anything else we can argue that they didn't feel like it broke their rules.
But I think a lot of people jump in here, and I can feel a few people boiling, so I'll say it on their behalf. They'll probably say, hey, what are you talking about? We just had all these Twitter files prove that a lot of the decisions were biased to the left, which means that many liberal accounts may get more leniency. I'm not saying that you did get more leniency. Maybe the previous administrators didn't think a private jet was private information.
It's a private
now it's being
jet.
interpreted
It's
differently.
In the name.
Fair point. Fair. I'm leaning towards that as well, Ian. I think I would agree it is private. Like if I was in Elon's shoes, or even now, if someone knows I'm traveling from one country to another, I never post my stories as I'm going somewhere.
It's called it's called a private jet because it's not a jet that you could buy a ticket for. It's not like like a private jet, like it's a secret undercover jet. I mean, we don't call our own cars a private car because most people
we call it private transport.
Public transportation.
That's what it is.
No one calls it
private
transport.
But
I think Matt's
it's okay to track people like that.
yeah, but
I think
literally
track any car if you have a person trailing it, right? It's in public, so you could make the very silly argument. I'm not saying you're making this argument, but a person could ostensibly make a silly argument in that, well, a car's driving out on a public road, so therefore it's okay to track it, and yet it's illegal to actually do that.
Yes, I would say like Matt, and I do want to go to other panelists, but I just want to end it with like if you follow someone's car, for example, hey, I'm not tracking the person, even though that's their private car. I'm not tracking the person, I'm tracking their car, but they're in that car. So I think. Again, I'm not talking about the way it was handled because I don't know how it was handled. I didn't look at all the tweets, but I just think like logically speaking, tracking a private jet, someone's private jet live, and instead of sharing the information 5, 10, 30 minutes later, could be considered doxing. I don't think it's too unfair. I'm not saying everyone would agree with it, but I don't think it's like too unfair, and I think it's been blown out of proportion, in my opinion, after I saw the Wikipedia article. That's my 2 cents, and I'd love you to stay on because I know that.
Can I just address that one part of that?
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
I would say the biggest difference is, your jet never leaves what essentially is a public airport. You don't drive your jet to your home. You don't drive your jet, you don't park the jet in your driveway. You don't bring the jet to your local mechanic. It stays in a public area or a hangar, which is a completely different thing too. It never goes to your private residence. So simply based on that, it would be impossible to track someone to where they sleep at night based on where their jet is sitting.
I'll go to other panel. I think they're still in the jet. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I make a quick point? I just think, aren't we having sort of like it's like the wrong argument in my mind, like whether he was justified or not. I mean, you can argue both sides, and I think everybody's made good points. To me, it's sort of a question of Twitter before Musk and Twitter after Musk, right? And before Musk, you had a system that didn't have a lot of transparency, but you had a bunch of people trying to make these decisions who were accountable to their CEO, who was accountable to the board, who was accountable to shareholders. The company was accountable to advertisers, and those advertisers were accountable to their customers, right? There's all these layers of accountability. And now you have one person running a system where there's also very little transparency, and he's accountable to no one. And I think that's the difference in my mind.
I think we're missing the argument completely. I think we're missing the argument completely. We have journalists, right? Journalists are on this space to talk about the journalist aspect of it. From an ethics standpoint, ethically, what value is it for a journalist to amplify and pinpoint the location of somebody's private plane to however many people will be consuming said news product? There's an ethical debate to be had about that. Forget the technicality of it.
I answered that question though about what my own personal opinion is on the importance of that account. I said I don't care. In terms of like me, I wouldn't report on where Elon Musk was traveling to and from if I used
So do you think it's wrong, Matt? Do you think it's wrong that they use pinpointed location? Because I can agree, I can see the point of what you're saying, where it makes sense to kind of share the other data of what you're saying. I think there can be a case made for the newsworthiness of that, but I don't think that a case can be made for the pinpointed locations or the real-time data of that. I don't think that made sense.
What he's talking about isn't suspendable.
I think we're conflating things though. As far as I know, there isn't any journalist who wrote, articles tracking Elon Musk via, where he was flying. What the newsworthy part here was, and you would ask Jack Sweeney, the creator of the Elon Jet account, but I don't think this 20-year-old considers himself a journalist, which means the ethics question does not work to him.
But they were sharing, links to that specific account that really didn't have news value, right? When a journalist writes an article about it, that's different than sharing that link where he's really trying to sort of sidestep intentionally kind of the rules. And he is, even like when I was in that space that got shut down or dropped or whatever, even the journalists in that space, I think, were pretty aware that what he was trying to do was not in good faith.
I mean, I think Elon Musk made that account newsworthy. We could say the tri-stand effect or whatever, but he did. There was no one talking about that account really until Elon Musk had a problem with it. And yeah, I'm sorry, a billionaire having a problem, a billionaire who runs the platform that he's like this big platform, banning this account is it's newsworthy. And people were right.
Well,
what's the value of that?
I would say that, linking to the Elon Jet account, if you're writing an article about Elon Jet, is very similar to linking to Kiwi Farms or to a Kiwi Farms thread if you're writing a story about it. And I don't think it's necessary for any reader to be linked to, a Kiwi Farms thread, right? I mean, this was a topic that was actually written about by Ben Collins, right? Ben Collins wasn't one of the people who got suspended because he didn't link to Elon Jet, but, he made a pretty good argument in his article of why this site is a danger and what it can cause, the harm it can cause to people. So he never actually linked to Kiwi Farms, and he was reporting on that. So I don't see why journalists feel that it's okay to link to Elon Jet's Facebook page or his Mastodon page or the Elon Jet website directly, especially when they wouldn't do the same thing for Kiwi Farms, right? I mean, they recognize there is a danger to linking to Kiwi Farms.
I think that's definitely an interesting argument. I would counter that with there's an interesting, there is interest there in the fact that this material that Elon Musk has deemed should not be allowed on his platform. Every other social media platform that is in that same industry, that same realm, the ones you just mentioned, Facebook, Instagram, Mastodon, they've all decided that, hey, there's nothing wrong with this. I think that's a very newsworthy aspect of it, that Twitter alone is decided that this isn't worthy of being posted on the site. And it just so happens that this one policy is based on the fact that it directly affected the owner of it. I mean,
can you discuss it without linking to it though? Can you discuss by describing it? Like, I'm kind of thinking, for example, there was the Sony leaks a while back, right? Like a few years back, there was the Sony leaks.
Yeah, 2013.
That was that was a while ago, and there was a lot of like really private data in that. If news, you could say that was of interest, right? Like to share these files, and some did share these files or the locations of where you can download that, and some did not, and that was a huge privacy issue. So like, at what point do we draw the line of what is acceptable versus how you can just talk about it in a descriptive way as a journalist and make the case of, in a way that you describe it to your audience? Like, that's the role of a journalist, no?
No, I think that's a good point too. But I mean, just simply the fact that this data is available everywhere in terms of like, you know, Kiwi Farms, you can only go to Kiwi Farms to get it. The fact that all these other mainstream platforms have decided there's nothing wrong with this, I mean, it means that a lot of people probably share that belief that there's nothing wrong with sharing this data. I think to compare it to Kiwi Farms isn't really an accurate sort of measurement. In terms of the Sony hacks, I don't know what was in those documents. Were they not shared because